Alrighty guys, so we're just in Marmora here. So Marmora Ironworks and Forges. So they had a huge history of ironworks here, right? Forging, foundries. Established in 1821, the Charles Hayes Ironworks centered on two huge blast furnaces and adjacent foundries powered by the Crow River. As the colony's first major industry, it made stoves, kettles, navy ballast, and even cannons to defend the empire. Workers came from Ireland and England. Many of their families still remain here. So the Marmora Ironworks, they had a bellows furnace and a cylinder pump furnace. Alrighty, so this is the Marmora mine lookout. So this is a big iron ore pit. It's a lake now, artificial lake, but it's a massive iron ore pit, 125 feet of overburden limestone. They excavated it out, and then once they excavated the limestone out, they went to go extract the iron ore, or the magnetite. And then once this supply of ore was exhausted, Blairtown, that was where they got the ore after it was exhausted from here. But in total, it was 300,000 tons of iron ore came out of here. And Bethlehem Steel was the company they were the ones that kind of masterminded it. And they were using the steel for the war because they were losing all kinds of ships. So they used the iron ore from this mine to basically keep producing ships. But it's basically just a massive lake now. But at one point it was a 700-foot deep iron ore pit with benches. That's one of the drill rigs. The mine in the 60s. The pit today. Yeah, so that's what it would have looked like back in the day. And now it's just a pit full of water. 1953, look, the rock truck going through Marmora. Driving right through Marmora. The Marmora mine opened in 55. It was owned by Bethlehem Steel Mills of New York, exporting iron ore pellets. The steel developed between 1951 and 1953. Before the Marmora mine could open, engineers first had to clear the land and blast through 120 feet of limestone to reach the high-grade ore which was underneath. The foundry opened up in 1822 and produced like some of the first iron products that we had. The most recent incarnation of what we see here. Over 1 million tons of iron ore came out of here. And it was a reaction between, there's a lot of marble rock and gabbro here, and the reaction between the two is what caused the magnetite to form. So let's go actually look at the place, because it's a big pit. 1,700 feet by 1,200 feet, and then 700 feet deep. You can see the bench. Look, you can actually see that's the top. So the rock trucks would have driven along this bench and they would have had to make their way all the way down. So this is 700 feet deep. If you were to dive in this, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you were to go scuba diving in this, it'd be 700 feet down to the bottom. Like, look at the size of it, guys. This was excavated by humans using machinery. I don't know if you can see, there's a bench there. You see right there that ledge that's got a bunch of trees on it, just above this one, just above like the top grade. That's a bench. So that would have been for mining, and it would go all the way down, 700 feet, spiraling all the way down. Iron ore mining. And like one of the first foundries in Ontario, 1822. It was for Upper Canada, and at the time Canada was still Upper Canada and Lower Canada. It was one of the main industries in Upper Canada. And Hayes, he was one of the top industrialists in Upper Canada at the time because of this. This launched him. Okay, we got some rocks here. This is a rock show here. Tailings pile, maybe, I think. Oh, well, that's nice. Look at that. Bird's eye view, top of the tailings pile here. You can see the tailings piles all over the place too. All around those big hip mounds there, that's all tailings. Standing all on top of it too. Just massive tailings piles. Alrighty, so let's talk about the actual ironworks and furnace works itself. There was two furnaces, one with an 8.5 foot diameter, one with a 9 foot diameter. And then there was two blowing devices. It was charcoal fired, and they had a German bellows that was 28 by 15. And then they had a cylinder blowing engine that was 3 cylinders, that was a height of 5.7 and a stroke of 3.5. And then they had a series of hammers. So when they weren't casting, they would melt pig iron and beat it to beat out all the impurities with a water hammer. And then they would put that in rollers turn it into bar stock steel or wrought iron, right? Depending on the quality of it. And then ship it out on boats and stuff done to market. They were basically charcoal fired. So they made charcoal, and then they used the charcoal to basically fire the furnace. And it was a bellows and a cylinder blower that were responsible for actually providing the air. And they could work in tandem as well because they were mounted side by side. So when you had them mounted side by side like that, you had the ability to use the heat of both. It was pretty sophisticated operation for the time. It was 1822. Canada wasn't even a country back then. But this is the mine site. Okay, so we're down at Millside Park here. Grinding stone, grist mill. The old mill, maybe? So you can see there's remnants of stuff here. Outcrops of rock. This is all hard rock ore deposits. No placer. Stop logs, don't want to fall in here. Wouldn't be good. Look at the pressure here. Look at the current. That's all pressure too. And it's totally extreme danger. That's all they had because all the water's trying to get through there, right? That's why they're generating power. Oh, they got stop logs. They're using, instead of gates, head gates. Well, for their head gates, they're using stop logs. Oh, these are foundations. There's all these old foundations here. Look at the old way they used to make concrete, eh? Big chunks of rock in there. Look at that. So, Marmora Historical Foundation, the birthplace of Ontario's mining industry. Nature blessed the region around Marmora with a wealth of buried treasure. Near the site of the future village and 5 miles by water across Crow Lake at Blairtown, a supply of iron ore was found and declared to be absolutely inexhaustible. Established in 1821, the Marmora Ironworks were operated by their founder, Charles Hayes, and immediately by his successors for half a century. On the shores of Crow Lake, a marble point was discovered, and the village of Marmora got its name. Here, at the edge of the Canadian Shield, valuable deposits of silver, lithographic limestone, lead, and soapstone were also found. In 1866, Mark Powell from Malone was prospecting for copper when he discovered gold instead. The Elderado gold rush began over the next decades. Gold was found at Deloro, Gilmore, and at Cordova. South and east of Marmora, the enormous pit and pilings of the Marmora mines, which closed in 1978, bear witness to the important part mining has played in this community. The birthplace of mining in Ontario, which is a pretty big deal because Ontario does a lot of mining. Historic Pierce Mill, 1870. These ruins are the footprint of one of the main buildings of the Pierce Company, whose mills and yards covered this ledge right down to the Crow River. Over 50 years, logs were driven downstream to feed the water-powered saws of the Pierce Mills. The thriving family business was also based on a woolen mill, retail stores, and even Armora's first hydroelectric plant, powered by the waters of the Crow River. So you got Buddy on the log booms. Oh, he's got a PV. That's a PV. He's got his corked boots there. Spiked boots. Walking on the logs. Dangerous job, man. Very dangerous job. There's the mill. It's like a nice wood carving. It's a beautiful wood carving. And then I think we were down below here. And I think those ruins we saw. Millside Park. This is the park. Birthplace of Ontario's mining industry. 1821. This is the driving tour you do. The Miner's Loop. Marmora started Ontario's mining industry, 1821. And it's kind of cool to think because BC didn't get going until much later on. So Ontario was really ahead of the game. And you got to keep in mind that the Foundry in particular and all these pieces of industry, they were what kind of helped solidify Canada's place, right? You know, the War of 1812, because after the War of 1812, they needed to build up industry. We're going to go to the Marmora Historical Center now. We're just in the middle of Marmora here, and we got some more information. Irontown, Pioneer Irontown. So this would have been the furnace, guys. That's the bellows, you can see. So slag, iron, right? Furnace. This is the furnace I was talking about. I was telling you about the height. That's the bellows. That's the water, so that's the flume. That's the water wheel. So there's a beam here, a horizontal beam that has a stone weight attached to it on one end. And then this water wheel has a cam. This right here, this is a cam, this horizontal member with these two black pieces here, that's a cam. And the water wheel actuates the cam, which then moves these two beams up and down. And then the weighted stone on the other side of the beam is gravity fed down. So it just basically feeds down, and then the bellows go poof, 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 and generate air for the furnace. And this would be charcoal fired furnace. You can see them dumping everything in there, right? But he's got his bucket, he's ready to go, dumping it in. And then they had another compressor for a furnace, and it was a cylinder blower. Basically 3 cylinders, 5'7" in height and 3.5 for the stroke. Pioneer Irontown, 1821 to 1875. In the early 1880s, Marmora was a hive of activity. On the banks of the Crow River, ironmaster Charles Hayes operated Marmora's first ironworks. Driven by great water wheels along the Crow River, the large blast furnace was completed, powered by water. 6 miles away in Blairtown, Hayes located a mountain of ore. His workers brought the ore to the ironworks by barge and worked long shifts melting the ore in the blast furnace and later cooling it to form hardened bars known as pig iron. At the height of its success, which was short-lived, the ironworks produced 2.5 tons of iron a day. Wow. It was the biggest and best in Upper Canada, and Marmora was our first pioneer iron town. East of the village of Marmora lies Deloro. In 1866, the town was booming with a number of factories and smelters being built, and Deloro was declared the Valley of Gold. Over the next 37 years, 25 shafts were sunk in the ground in the pursuit of gold, and more than $200,000 was spent building a refinery, which unfortunately proved to be a complete failure at reducing gold. That's because it was really heavily arsenic laden and contaminated. They tried to roast the arsenic out with furnaces, but it didn't work. In the early 1900s, the factory was repurposed to refine ore shipped from the O'Brien silver mines of cobalt. Deloro was booming. The refinery employed 400 men by 1917 who refined the ore, and stellite was sold, the leftover arsenic, for use in pesticides, fertilizer, and even cosmetics. So stellite, the world's first commercially produced stellite, was made in Deloro by Dr. Haynes. He was a metallurgist. He was the guy that figured out how to produce stellite, basically, which is like cutlery and stuff, and then the arsenic was used for pesticides and fertilizer. By 1920, Deloro had substantial managers' houses, as well as a row of duplexes for the workers on each side of the main street. The general store was the only privately owned business. 1916, that's the Deloro mine site from the east bank of the river. Note that the 1822 Arsenic Works Center is still in use. Arsenic bag house on the right, cobalt oxides plant on the left. Wouldn't that be fun, eh? Working in an arsenic bag plant in the 1880s? Who wouldn't want to do that, eh? Arsenic Works Center, that sounds like absolute amazing time. By 1917, over 400 men were employed in a series of plants destined to irretrievably pollute the stretch of the river they sat along. Mine. Marmora means marble in Latin. Oh, the Pierce Company, yeah, that's right. That was one of the other things, the grist mill and the lumber mill. It was charcoal fired. Perhaps one of the most prosperous businesses in Marmora's history was the Pierce Lumber Company. Thomas Pierce, who was also Revy and Warden in the late 1800s, built mills in 1873, launching the Pierce family into a number of successful associated businesses that would help prosper for more than a half a century. A stream of lumberjacks set out northerly each fall. Locals were joined by French Canadians, even Scandinavian loggers. For more than 3 months, they would work the bush with their axes and crosscut saws. Huge logs would be trimmed, 12-pound broad axes, then towed, skid, and cajoled onto the frozen lakes. As spring thawed the rivers and lakes, the timber would start its journey down the Crow River to Beaver Creek. Log drivers called white watermen would break up the jams with hooks, peavey, and dynamite. Peaveys are sweet. Peaveys are really useful. Looks like an old sawmill. Steel and Ironworks, Campbell Steel and Ironworks. Furnace. Nice. Marmora is Upper Canada's first pioneer iron town. Established in 1821, the iron ore works gave life to mines in Blairtown, Belmont, and Marmora. As word of the area's geological diversity spread, mining for other minerals began in Malone, Cordova, and Deloro, drawing old world miners from many countries, especially England. Okay guys, so this is Deloro mine site. Oh, they took the nuclear warning down. Maybe there's no radiation. There used to be radiation warnings here. It's a remediation project. So yeah, I don't think there's a radiation hazard here anymore because there used to be a radiation sign. Her Majesty the Queen. Well, it's the king now. It's not the Queen anymore. It's the king now. But Okay, so this is a remediation area, right? So Deloro had a gold mine, then they started a smelter in 1896 area, like late 1800s, early 1900s, but it was inefficient and it didn't work. They had roasting ovens for the arsenic, but it was really bad and just contaminated, and the ore was bad. So what they did instead was they turned it into a smelter for cobalt. Port Hope, the uranium refinery in Port Hope, they sent all their uranium waste here for it to become remediated. Contaminants of concern here are arsenic, cobalt, copper, nickel, and low-level radioactive materials. Cleanup plan tailings area. Cover tailings with an engineered soil cover combined with collection treatment of groundwater and upstream water flow diversion. So they're engineering the ground here. You can see topsoil, silt and clay, sand, existing limestone. So this is what's over the tailings pile. And then limestone berm, drainage ditch, groundwater pumps, equalization pond. The existing limestone cap in this area will be covered with an engineered cap that is 1.65 meters thick with vegetated hybrid poplar trees and grass. These measures will prevent more than 90% of precipitation from infiltrating the tailings. Groundwater surface management. An interceptor ditch will be built to divert clean upstream surface water away from the engineered cover. Contaminated seepage will be collected and pumped to the arsenic treatment plant. Arsenic, the main contaminant of concern, cobalt, copper, nickel, low-level radioactive waste represents 2 to 6% of the waste. Other materials being managed: refining slag, mine tailings, laboratory waste, demolished materials. 750,000 cubic meters of waste, that's a lot. Deloro's industrial history dates back to 1867 and includes gold mining and refining, production of arsenogenical pesticides, production of cobalt metal, silver, nickel, and stellite. The first commercial stellite in the world was produced here. When refining and manufacturing operations shut down in 61, nearly a century's worth of hazardous byproducts and residues remain on the property. These materials cause significant environmental impacts. Gold and arsenic like each other, they go together well, but in the case of humans, it's not good for you, right? It's arsenic. Deloro Mine was the site of nearly 100 years of mining, refining, and manufacturing. Gold mining as part of the Hastings County Madoc Gold Rush, right? The Madoc goldfields. 1867 to 1902. Production of arsenic-based pesticides, herbicide, rodenticides. Deloro was a pioneer producer of arsenic and supplied much of the North American continent from the 1882 to the late 1850s. Deloro processed silver from the ores of Cobalt, Ontario, 1907 to 61. Cobalt metal production. Deloro was the world's first commercial producer of cobalt metal, 1912 to 1958. Stellite production. Deloro was a leading producer of this cobalt chromium tungsten alloy, particularly useful in defense production during the years. Operations at the site ended in 61. The Ministry of Environment assumed responsibility for environmental cleanup of the site in 79 when the site owner failed to comply with the ministry's orders to stop pollution. The overall objective of the Deloro mine site cleanup project is to finish the cleanup of this abandoned mining and industrial complex by isolating and containing wastes and engineering the site to be safe for people and the environment for hundreds of years. Alrighty, so we're in the town of Elderado here, Ontario's first gold rush. In August 1866, Marcus Herbert Powell struck gold nearby on the farm of John Richardson. That was the Richardson mine. The following year, Ontario's first gold mine went into production on that site, and the community of Elderado was founded. The Richardson mine proved unprofitable and soon ceased operation, but its discovery caused a substantial gold rush to the surrounding region. A number of small gold mines were subsequently established in southeastern Ontario: Deloro, Gilmore, Cordova, Feagle, Bannockburn, and Golden Fleece. Owing to the decreasing ore values, wasteful recovery methods, and shortage of capital, most of these mines were abandoned after only a few years of operation. But it was the site of Ontario's first gold rush. But this is it. This is what's left of it. And it's just basically a one-street town. Elderado. This is where it all started. And this is in the heart of the Madoc goldfields. So obviously not going to check out, every single place, but Feagle, Bannockburn, Cordova, Malone, all these places, they're all scattered, various locations throughout. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for our tour of the Madoc goldfields. It's in southeastern Ontario. Kingston or Belleville would be the two cities of note that you want to kind of use as your reference point, and then you head north. There's various roads you can take. I'd recommend giving it a good day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified. And Sasquatch Prospector out.